Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Kim and I'm back with episode 3 of Beyond the Shire. And for this episode, we are continuing with the Iron Hill Dwarves and we're going to make some old hammer dwarf rangers for the army. And that means I'm going to be converting the classic dwarf archers that were released during the early 2000s for the Shadow and Flame supplement from Games Workshop. And what that involves will be removing the chainmail from the metal models and adding the iconic capes that the Dwarf Rangers are known for. So I'm super excited. This video will primarily show all the sculpting. Painting, not so much, as you can watch the first 2 episodes to get more of a concept. And if people do like the painting, I will eventually do full painting tutorials for them. And here are the 6 original dwarves. We are focusing on the 3 archer dwarf warriors. So starting off with this dwarf archer, we are simply going to start trimming all of the chainmail aspects to the model, as I am sculpting old hammer MESBG models, and I am using the plastic dwarf rangers as reference. So those current models do not have any chainmail or very little. These ones have a ton of them because they're meant to be the dwarf warrior stat line. So grab your pair of clippers and start trimming chunks of the chainmail. Once you have a decent amount done, grab your X-Acto knife, and like I mentioned in the second episode, you can use it like a potato peeler or a carver and whittle away any remaining chunks that were difficult to get off. Or I use this to get a very smooth finish to everything I cut. This does sound like it'd be difficult as it is pewter, but like I mentioned before, with a little bit of practice and a little bit of controlled pressure, this is fairly easy, and it honestly makes your cutting and conversions a lot more accurate for these MESBG metal miniatures. After a bit of work, this is what the warrior should look like. You can see without the chainmail, it looks like a totally different miniature, so I'm super excited. You can see the back isn't super clean, don't worry, as we will be putting a cape eventually. Moving along to the second dwarf warrior, this is going to be another simple trimming session as this guy doesn't have too much armor. Grabbing your clippers, once again, take your time and gently clip away or make it as smooth as you can, as we need to replace this with cloth. And again, you can see I'm using my clippers, doing very small snips at a time. Once you get used to this, a lot of the Lord of the Rings miniatures are really easy to convert and cut. And this is what the warrior should look like after the chainmail is cut off. I did chop some of the hair as well, as we do have to sculpt a hood and the cape. So I had to take that into account when I was cutting the pewter. Moving on to the last dwarf archer, this guy is going to be a little bit more extensive as he has a lot more armor, and in fact he has a helmet. So starting off with the pauldrons, I trimmed them off with my clipper, and you can see he has a lot more of this chainmail or plated armor on his midsection, so you have to trim all of that off, or at least get it as smooth as you can, so when we do sculpt the fabric, we can get a lot more natural folds and detail into the body. And here are the models ready for the green stuff. There is a 4th warrior in the back who is actually meant for the next video. Moving on to sculpting, I'm going to call this dwarf archer number 2. So to start off, I have to sculpt the cloth in between his legs. There was chainmail there, and I did scrape it away with an X-Acto knife. So grabbing a small ball of green stuff, you can see by grabbing the silicone tip tool, we're going to do a pushing and dragging motion. Now I know in the last episode I don't encourage that movement when you want to get a smooth and flat surface, but for something like this shape and texture we want, we're going to need this tool and this motion to get what we want. making our way up to his arms. So because we chopped quite a bit off of the chainmail, we're going to have to replace it with more cloth. So grabbing more balls of green stuff, probably 1 to 5 millimeters in diameter, we're going to place it on the shoulder, and I do apologize with the off camera. Grabbing the silicone tip tool, we're going to do that rolling motion. You can see how by rolling it, I'm getting it to cling nicely to the pewter, but at the same time building up the shape I want and getting some of the fabric folds. To sculpt this fabric, I'd recommend you actually just look at everyday clothing on yourself or on your family members or partner, and you can get an idea of how the cloth should look when you're at rest, when you're holding something. That will help you get all the shapes you want or make it look more natural. So you can see I am getting that rolling motion constantly throughout, trying to make everything smooth first of all, then I go back and add the folds. Moving to the mini tunic that he wears over his main tunic, I have to get these, I'd call them maybe just armholes for that mini vest. So by grabbing more small 1mm balls of green stuff, I'm grabbing the silicone tip tool, and you can see with this almost stabbing dragging motion again, I am getting a very nice blend, but at the same time building up this semicircular shape. By taking my time, I'm getting it smooth, and just keep prodding with it until you have the desired effect you want. And this is what the Dwarf Warrior number 2 should look like. So the cloth is all set and I'm fairly happy with it. I do go back and kind of accentuate a fold here or two, but he's ready for the cape. So to sculpt the capes, you're going to create this triangle shape of green stuff, and for measurements it's depending on the height of the miniature. For this dwarf, I don't want it past his knees, so aim for the neck to the knees for the length. Once I place this triangle of green stuff on his back, I'm grabbing the silicone tip tool, and as you can see, I am rolling and dragging to get a basic shape. Now, you just want to pay attention to the direction the wind is going or what type of cloth you want. If you want it more static, you wouldn't play around so much with what I'm doing, trying to get it to be so flowing, but I'm trying to match it from the Games Workshop dwarves, and their capes are bellowing in the wind, they're moving around, the fabric is very thin it seems, so I'm going with that. What you're seeing too eventually is I'm using my fingers to kind of smoothen and extend the cape at certain sections. You can always go back and do this before we start adding the folds. So this main step is probably the longest and most tedious, as the rest will fall naturally. So now when we have the triangle on the back, we're going to grab the second silicone shaped tool. This is, I call the shovel, and basically for capes, in my experience, they have a triangle where the neck of the model will be, where the hood is attached. That's just a buildup of the cloth, and we have to work on creating the cape where it connects to the front, so over the shoulders. So by grabbing this tool, I'm going to start pulling the green stuff up. We're going to almost create like a U where both shoulders have the cloth over it and the neck section will have this V shape. So grabbing the tool, you can see I'm prodding around on the back of the cape, getting a sense of direction for it. And again, it's entirely up to you, to your discretion. If you want a cape more static, you don't have to do all of this. If you want it to be flowing, you're gonna have to keep playing around with the green stuff and have reference photos. I'm being inspired by the plastic Dwarf Ranger models, so you can see the direction that the cloth goes and the fabric is flying in the wind. And you can see up on the shoulder section, I'm slowly now creating that U shape as I just mentioned earlier. So take your time with this. I know it can be a little bit frustrating, but because this is a cape and it should have a lot of motion, if it doesn't look accurate for the first go, don't worry. After a couple times doing it, you'll get the hang of it. And as you can see, I do go back and forth between the two silicone tip tools. Once I have that shape set in, I'll grab the first one we've been primarily working with. This sharp pencil type silicone tip tool is good for adding the folds we want for cloth. So you're gonna stab with it, pulling up. Once you have the basic shape, you can drag down by creating that depth, and by applying more gentle pressure straight down, you can just see it how fast that the folds come onto the cape, and it's quite natural. The more you play around with this, the more, I'd say, depth you would get from this tool. And if you don't like some sections, you see I apply pressure sideways, up and down, and this is essentially like a pencil, so you can draw in the different folds, the depth you want. Here you can see I'm doing a rolling motion because I want a dip in this cloth. So this tool is very diverse. It has a lot of different uses, but it probably will be your best friend when it comes to adding the folds into all the capes. So you can see here, I push up on the back of it. I'm getting all these new shapes, and it's so fast. And after about 30 minutes of doing that motion, you can create a cape like this. So Archer 2 or Ranger 2 has his cape completed. Really happy with all the definition I got with it. Moving to the hood now. So I grab a small ball of green stuff, probably 3 millimeters in diameter. And when I put it on top of the head, I'll grab the pencil silicone tip tool, and you can see I do a rolling motion from the top down. This is because when you see these hoods on these fantasy miniatures and Lord of the Ring miniatures, the bottom is usually where the fabric is resting, of course. With gravity, it's very natural. So when you do it, you want to ensure that you have these 3 sides to the hood that are fairly well defined. And this rolling motion will naturally give you, honestly, a great start. And in some cases, you could just call it quits after doing 1 minute of the dragging motion. But of course, I want to add a lot more definition and depth to the hoods. So once you create the 3 sides to it, you can go back with this tool and start adding the different folds that the hood would have. Now this is all practice, and with fabric, there's no real good way to guide you for where the fold should be. Just have reference photos, look at fabric, look at your bed covers, and overall you'll get an idea of where things should look. And we can't get the most accurate look. These are fantasy miniatures, so you can be a bit more stylized in the approach. And here you can see Ranger number 2, or the first Ranger, is completed. He looks really cool, really happy with it. The folds come off really well in this miniature. Moving to the more relaxed posed Archer. Just like before, we're going to grab some more green stuff and start covering where all the chainmail used to be. Basically, we are replacing the fabric. And I do apologize about the repetition of this video. This video is going to cover all 3 of them and just show the same process but applied over 3 different models with 3 different poses. So once we have the green stuff on the shoulder, I grab the silicone tip tool, and like before, we are smoothing it out. This is a smaller surface, so I will do a dragging motion down. Sometimes, I will be honest, by rolling and prodding around, you may naturally create a very cloth-like texture or natural folds. You can always integrate that into the sculpt. So this is why I do encourage rolling and tapping a lot. You'll organically create folds that otherwise you wouldn't have thought of, and it just adds more tools to your arsenal when it comes to sculpting. Now that we have the arms done, I'm going towards his lower half. As you can see, I put 2 sausage rolls of green stuff, and by grabbing the pencil silicone tip tool, you can see I am edging the line as I want the belt to look like it is pressing the cloth. So once I have that a little bit smooth, I can use this tool to start adding all the folds again. This portion doesn't need too many as it's a very small part of the tunic, but you still want everything to match. And I did make a mistake here. I put a bit too much green stuff around the back. Because I know I have to sculpt a cape on the back, this was unnecessary. So again, another tip would be think about where the green stuff has to go. You'll save time and of course the clay itself. So in this case, I did waste about 2 to 3 millimeters length of green stuff as it's going to be completely covered by the cape. And after a little bit of work with the same process and the same motions I've been showing you, this is what he should look like. Now moving on to the cape. Again, just like the first warrior, you're going to grab a triangle or a rectangle of green stuff. Grabbing the silicone pencil tool, you can see just like before, we are going to create that U shape around the shoulders and neck for the cloth. So push up where the shoulders should be to create some nice depth, and then we're going to create that triangle near the base of the neck. Now this miniature has a lot of hair, so when I do sculpt the hood, it will be actually down. Unlike the previous one, he was actually wearing the hood. This one will have it straight down, so you don't have to worry too much about that texture right where the neck is. But I still grab the tool like before, same process. We roll, drag around here and there, whatever you need to do to add some definition and depth. It's all about the direction of the cape as well. These are fantasy models, so we can be a bit more fantastical with where the cloth should be, or we are playing with these miniatures and we are painting them about 2 feet off the table. So you want things to pop. So I'd suggest don't make the capes as realistic as you possibly can, because some cases the cape will look very dull. And here you guys can see that I'm grabbing the same tool and I'm applying that pressure up and down, and you can see how much the texture is coming onto this cape. It's very natural. You want these folds to look as organic as possible. So once you use this pencil tool, you can see the motion. I'm going up and down, getting different angles. I'm tapping here and there, rolling some parts. I want this to be more defined. So for that example, I rolled up to create the ridge for this big fold or this big bellowing cape. So again, this tool I would recommend, honestly, you can spend maybe a whole day just playing around, creating different textures. I'd say that's one of the best ways to improve your sculpting, is to not jump straight into a full-on miniature, but to continuously practice and play around. Moving on to the last dwarf archer. This guy is a little bit extensive, but I won't rehash some of the details I already did. This guy, I'm resculpting his forehead as he was wearing a helmet. So all I had to do was grab a small ball of green stuff and create the frowning ridge we have, our brow. And it's pretty simple. You're gonna do the dragging motion and rolling on the back of it to make sure it connects and creates the overall shape of a skull. Then towards the front of the face, I'm gonna grab the silicone tip tool and essentially create a sharp line where the eyes meet this brow. Because Lord of the Rings is smaller scale, this should work fairly well. And after we have the ridge or the brow done, we grab a smaller piece of green stuff and just blend the nose in to the tip of it. And this is a huge jump again. I didn't want to cover it as I already had 2 dwarves for the cloth, and the hands you can see in the past 2 episodes. But this new pose is really dynamic. The dwarf is reaching back to grab an arrow out of his hip quiver, or how he's holding these arrows, and I'm really happy with the overall pose. Again, I should have paid more attention, as when I put the cape on, it's gonna cover a little bit more of the green stuff than I planned. So this is a mistake on my end once again. Try to imagine where the cape would fully fall, would save time from some sculpting that you won't see otherwise. And there you guys have it. All 3 dwarves are done, so I'm going to do a quick overview. For this relaxed one, I'm really proud of the hood settled on the shoulders. The concept applied, I realized I didn't record that, but we have many more episodes to go deeper into it, but really happy with how he looks. Moving on to the second ranger, I do love this pose as it looks like he found his prey or an enemy in the distance and he's getting ready to let loose one of the arrows. So really happy as this guy was probably the most extensive conversion, needing a whole sculpted arm and basically half the head had to be resculpted from the top up. And for the last ranger, a more simple pose, but I think overall I'm very happy with it. I'd say these dwarves were all a exercise in sculpting more fabric. And that was all the sculpting. Here's the thoughts on painting. Not too much as you've seen some of them from the first 2 episodes. So starting off with the more relaxed ranger model, I'm really happy with the color choice and the new leather. So for rangers, they have hardly any metal now, and I wanted to add a third neutral color, and I'd say that's that weird beige tan fatigue. And then for the cape, I'm really happy I went with this darker gray. I think it's very neutral, it looks nice, and it does match the army, and I'm really happy that I kind of exaggerated the highlights on some parts of the cape just to make them stand out a lot more. And on to the second one. This guy is a shooting pose. I'm really happy once again. I think the white beard is a nice, I would say, color breakage in the model, but it complements the blue and the browns. So I think these iron hills that I'm painting after Murren and Drawer, the color combination is actually really well thought of and it's very pleasing to the eye, and I'm really happy that it's coming this way as I debated on how to paint the capes for probably half a day, but the paint jobs total only took per model 2 hours. So I would just want to showcase that you can paint models to a really nice tabletop standard without having to spend a whole day per model, as we do have to knock out these warriors to play games. So really happy with how this guy turned out as well. And here's how the army stands at the moment. Super pleased with how they all look together. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. More dwarf videos to come.